Hello again, my little conscripts, and welcome to another Mordian Glory video. In today's episode, I am going to make a bold statement. I know, how unlike me. I think I found a way to make Death Riders not bad. In fact, I'm going to go a step further and say, I think I found a way to make them good. If not, one of the best screening units in the game. I know. You don't believe me. I'm going to have to back this up. So without further ado, let's mount up, couch our lances, and charge right into this.
Attention, guardsmen! The Commissariat has detected you have not yet liked this video. Do so immediately, or else you will face the Emperor's wrath. And anyone who has not yet subscribed to the channel will be transferred to the penal battalions. That is all. Move out!
So first things first, let us remind ourselves why Death Riders are considered kind of trash and why so many people have written them off. Firstly, it comes down to their comparison with Rough Riders, who they have a very similar battlefield role to, but a slightly worse stat line. Rough Riders have got movement 12, these guys have only got movement 10. And then it massively comes down to what weapons they're equipped with. Rough Riders get access to things like the Melter tip, which means that they can actually threaten things with damage. Sure, it's only one attack, but it naturally hits on a 3 with a bit of fixed bayonet, so you're going to hit on a 2. Strength 9, AP minus 4, D6 damage with Lance means that these guys are a legitimate threat. They're probably going to get to be that threat once, but at least they get to be a threat. Death Riders, on the other hand, only have the Frag Lance, and whilst it still has the Lance special rule, meaning it gets +1 to wound on the charge, it just doesn't have the strength, the AP, or the damage to really impress. And so when you have both of these units that are not only competing with each other, but also are on the same page of the books, people are just comparing them right there and then, it's easy to see why people have been very disappointed with the Krieg Death Riders. After all, why would you just take Rough Riders and have something that can actually do some damage? But here's the thing. Comparing units damage versus damage and looking at them through the lens of what they're able to do in terms of like taking models off your opponent can sometimes be a bit of a trap. I mean, look at the World Eater Goremongers. Loads of people, when they first saw them, said that they were an absolute trash tier unit, shelf tier unit. The shelf they were going to be on was going to be the GW store. They were so bad. And yet they have become an incredibly potent, incredibly powerful unit for the World Eaters. Not because of the damage they can do, but because of the tactical utility that they bring to that army. And as crazy as it sounds, I think Death Riders have been overlooked. And I think that they actually do have the potential, albeit in a specialist role, to be a great screening utility unit. And the potential to do some damage as well, albeit that will be a secondary role. But Mordian, I hear you ask, you have said that Death Riders are trash multiple times. You've said that you're better off taking Rough Riders multiple times. Well, what has changed is I actually got a comment. I got a comment from a viewer recently who said, Mordian, I miss it when you did the tactics and combo videos. Please can you bring those back? And I realized that actually I had kind of fallen into a bit of a trap myself. I had been just looking at things at face value, looking at things in isolation, not looking at the way things could combo. And so I went back through my codex and I started looking at things from multiple angles. And I noticed that the Death Rider screening line ability pairs incredibly well with the stratagem from the Recon detachment. You see, the screening line ability reads, once per turn when an enemy unit ends a normal advance or fall back move within 9 inches of this unit, if this unit is not within engagement range of one or more enemy units, it can make a normal move of up to 6 inches. Now that's a pretty decent ability, but the problem you tend to find is that being able to move up to 6 inches away, it might not be enough. And often what people end up doing with this thing is actually pushing their Death Riders forward to try and limit the extra movement the opponent is getting from charges. But what if I told you there was a way of using screening line to guarantee that your opponent would need a 9-inch charge to get you, and that it would make them actually really good at pulling back and then countercharging back in? This is where the recon element detachment comes in. Now, I've been a proponent of the recon detachment for a long time. I know a lot of people that have dismissed it, but personally, I've had great success with it. And with absolutely zero practice, I went to a Super Major GT and ended up going, I think it was 3-2, and I easily could have gone 4-1. The reason I didn't go 4-1 is I literally added the points up wrong in one game. And this was in a tournament where I faced 5 combat armies in a row, which in some ways you could say invalidates my whole detachment rule. But even with that, I found that the detachment rule was fine in many cases, and that the stratagems were really able to do a lot of heavy lifting for me. And so I went back to Recon Element. I looked at those stratagems again, applied the experience I had from that Super Major, and Tanglefoot Grenades jumped out at me. So how does this stratagem work? You use it at the start of your opponent's charge phase, and you select one of your Astra Militarum grenade units. And the effect is, until the end of the phase, each time an enemy unit selects your unit as the target of a charge, subtract 2 from the charge roll. It's not cumulative with any of the negative modifiers to that charge roll. Now, when I first read this, when I first used this, I thought that it only worked for like one charge. So if I use Tanglefoot Grenades, it screws over one person's charge, but then if the next unit charges me, they're fine. But that's not how it works. You put it on your unit, and until the end of the phase, every single time someone tries to charge that unit, they're -2. And I used Tanglefoot Grenades to incredible effect. It was the #1 reason why I was able to get through that Super Major and do as well as I could, because I had to basically relearn all of my old screening tricks from like previous editions, and then on top of that, I had a -2 charge, which really screws with people. Not only does it screw with them like actually, because they just might not make the dice roll, but it screws with them psychologically, because they're like, oh, well, I know he's got Tanglefoot Grenades in the bank, so now I need to play around that. Oh, I might not go for the charge turn. You might delay their go turn by a turn, which is a big deal. And do you know what's really interesting? Death Riders have the grenades keyword. This means that if someone moves within 9 inches of your Death Riders, you can move up to 6 inches away, and then when they try and charge you, you can make them -2 to that charge. Now, please correct me down in the comment section below, because I'll be the first one to admit I'm not the best with assault rules. I am a guard player. I like to shoot things in the face until they fall to sleep. But I believe you have to stay over 1 inch away from each other. So if an enemy tries to move right into your grill, they have to stay at least over 1 inch away. If I then move 6 inches back, that means they would be over 7 inches away, making it a 7-inch charge. If I then use Tanglefoot Grenade on my Death Riders, it would mean that the enemy would have to make a 9-inch charge to that unit. And that would be from a starting position if they had moved within just over 1 inch away from me. That is crazy. Your opponent could move right into your face, and via a combination of screening line and Tanglefoot Grenade, you can make that a 9-inch charge. And just think about if they're not right in your face. What if they just move a bit, pretty close? What if they get within like 3 or 4 inches? That's pretty reasonable. If depending on how aggressive you've been with your Death Riders, you're like, okay, I know that I'm going to move up to here. You could probably math out and pre-measure if you got good with this. I think this is a unit that requires some reps, but if you get those reps in, you are going to become the bane of assault armies in your location. Because you can be like, okay, well, I know they move X amount of inches. So if I move so that if I'm moving away so that when they have their move, they're going to end within like 4 inches of me, I can screening line back 6 inches, and then I can go, boom, -2 to your charge. Oh, look, you can't physically charge me. And I've not even lost that much ground. That's crazy. And then, thanks to your 10-inch move, they're left out in the open, swinging their dicks in the wind. Thanks to your 10-inch move, you can then just move right back up to them and get the charge off. And I think there's a whole number of factors that you can sort of throw into this, which start making it seem more and more potent. The first thing is that there is obviously a counter argument, which is, well, if you're ceding a lot of ground, that means that you're potentially moving off things like objectives and you're potentially pinning yourself back. There is definitely, I won't deny that, there's definitely that could be a problem. But one thing that I have noticed in my time playing 40k is that often assault armies really rely upon the bonus movement they essentially get from the charge phase to get across the board quickly. And if you're able to deny them that, then it can really mess with their plans. Traditional screening tends to dictate that what you do is you move up, you advance up quite a lot, knowing that those forward elements are going to die, but that those forward elements die, leaving the enemy exposed. The problem with that traditional screening method is that it still gives your opponent that extra movement. Even just like 3 or 4 extra inches, it's extra movement because they made that charge. But with this new screening method, there is definitely potential that you are getting to deny one of the strongest things about assault armies, which is the fact they make up a lot of ground from their charges. They essentially get to move twice. They move once in the movement phase, and then they move once in the charge phase. If you can deny that, you are really limiting their mobility, and everyone knows movement wins games. I think there's also an element of movement wins games in terms of you denying your opponent's movement, but also still having your movement at your disposal. You can move back, but with that 10-inch move, you can happily regain quite a lot of territory. There is another potential counter argument here of what if the enemy just shoots you to death? If the enemy just is a shooting army, then this tactic doesn't really apply. But if your enemy is a shooting army and you're in recon detachment, then your detachment rule starts kicking in, and you've got a bunch of Death Riders running around with 3 wounds. And Death Riders, they are cheap enough and disposable enough that you can just use them as a generic, I'm going to go and get this objective, I'm going to go and do this action. The great thing about this is that it's flexible. It's a tool in the toolbox. It's not one you have to build your whole army around. It's just something, oh, I've got this for when I need it. Let's say you're in a tournament and the first round, you've got your just 10 Death Riders. You just plug 10 Death Riders into the unit. You've got your 10 Death Riders. First round, you're playing Assault Army. Okay, we're going to start messing around with screening line and Tanglefoot grenades. We're going to make that Assault Army's life hell. Brilliant. Next round, you play into a Shooting Army, and you're like, okay, well, I don't need to be so aggressive with this. I can stage my Death Riders up behind this ruin, knowing that with their 10-inch move and potentially a movement move, they're going to be able to move out and charge and bully someone in my next turn. Or you can use them as a distraction unit against a shooting army. Don't forget, you do have the stratagem Courageous Diversion, which means that these guys can move forward and start making everything behind them -1 to hit, whilst also gaining a 6-up Feel No Pain. They can just add a lot to the table, which isn't even anything to do with damage, just like those Goremongers. They can protect you from shooting. They can screen you from assaults. They can be cheap, disposable, objective go-getters. They don't have to do damage to the enemy in order for them to contribute to the battle. And you don't have to load so many points into them with things like Dreer, which starts making them too expensive for them to be able to start doing something. Again, I think looking at Death Riders as a damage dealing unit is a red herring. I think it's a mistake we've all been making. And I think seeing them as a cheap utility unit, which could be a hell of a nuisance for your opponent, or just a stand-in for an infantry platoon and doing the same things that they would do, is the right way of looking at these guys. And just taking a second look at those stratagems, we've just seen things through screening line and Tanglefoot Grenade. And we also sort of touched upon how good Courageous Diversion is as well with this. It does work on infantry and mounted units. We've also got Scouting Outriders. If you move away from the enemy, get your unit over to a flank and then put them into strategic reserve, that's a great way of then bringing them back on another side of the board. And that could help you unlock objectives like establish locusts, behind enemy lines, engage on all fronts, or just helps them stay alive for a bit longer by positioning them onto a different side of the board where maybe it's not quite so hot. It just means that these bloody Death Riders are constantly keeping your opponent off balance. And every time they try and get to grips with them, suddenly they're somewhere else. I think the best way of looking at this simply, though, is I move away, get them into reserve, and I can start doing objectives. I also really like the way how the Death Riders start pairing with things like draw them out as well. Now, you can't use draw them out on your Death Riders. I checked. It would have been amazing if you could have moved like 12 inches with them. But sadly, Death Riders don't have the platoon keyword. But how I see this is it feeds into this whole element of recon is the movement detachment. It's the tricksy detachment. It's the it's the one that just screws your opponent the most. So you take a unit of these Death Riders, you do the whole like, okay, I'm going to screening line, Tanglefoot Grenade you, you're not going to get near these guys. And your opponent next turn goes, God damn it, I can't get near the Death Riders. Screw it, I'll go after that infantry platoon instead. That should be a much easier situation. And then your platoon does the same thing with the move and the Tanglefoot Grenade. And you're like, God damn it.
Reporting for duty,
God
sir.
damn it. No matter where I go, no matter what part of this list I try and engage with, it's constantly moving around and messing with me. And then they're like, well, I'll tell you what, I'll try and deep strike within like 6 inches of you then. No, you won't, buddy. I've got Scramble Field. I really... Now, again, that's only for infantry units, but you can see the combination of Death Rider screening line with Tanglefoot Grenade, and then if they try and go after something else, you can start using draw them out. If they try and deep strike, you can stop that. You can start going off the board, coming back in other areas. If they start just trying to like, well, I'm not going to close you, I'm going to shoot you. Courageous Diversion comes in. There's all of these stratagems that all feed into this pot that Death Riders can contribute to, which just constantly means that your opponent is never getting to fight on their terms. They're constantly having to be reactionary to you, and you have got proactive tools in your toolbox to stop them from doing what they want to do. And all of these things create dilemmas. And dilemmas, they've got no good solution. Now, I appreciate that we've kind of moved away a little bit from focusing on the Death Riders, so I want to bring it back on topic to them just for a moment. Hopefully you can see that Death Riders actually have some potential. I think we've kind of all dismissed them, overlooked them. But they actually do have something to offer. And I actually think that it could be game winning. You get into a tournament matchup with someone that they only have one tool in their toolbox, which is Assault. And this could really mess with them. I definitely think there's also an argument to be made for using this with Dreer. I know before I said you could avoid using Dreer, but I think there is an argument that Dreer has a place here with the whole, well, I'm going to get aggressive, you're going to try and come at me, I'm going to move out of your charge range, and then when I move back and charge you, I've got grenades as a stratagem to do mortal wounds to you, and then Dreer lets me do mortal wounds, dev wounds as well. I definitely think there's something there. I just think that's kind of an expensive combo. I think if you were going to go for that combo, you'd have to get really good at positioning. Because you could, with good practice and good familiarity, if you play a lot on, let's say, like UKTC boards, for example, so you know what they do, there's definitely an element of, I'm going to move here, but knowing that I've got a 6-inch move in the bag, I'm going to position my unit in a way where when the enemy tries to close distance, I then hide behind an L-shaped ruin. And I'm going to make it so you can't attack me through the L-shaped ruin. So I think there's something there as well, but it's just going to be a high skill maneuver. And probably one that I know I personally would struggle with. I know there's going to be some people sort of thinking right now, okay, this sounds all very plausible and very good, but why aren't people doing this? Why aren't we seeing people do it on the tabletop? I think there is, like I said, an element of these guys being overlooked. And I think it comes down to the fact that most people would not think of Death Riders inside Recon. A lot of the focus of the Guard Codex has been on the power of Combined Arms and Hammer of the Emperor, neither of which really are conducive to Death Riders. They don't get anything from being in those attachments. And then you've got a lot of the diehard Krieg fans, which like, I am Siege Detachment until I die. But again, these guys don't really get much out of Siege Detachment. So I think there's been quite a strong case of Death Riders have had this potential. This is good potential. But because it's not in what you would say is a traditionally powerful detachment or a fluffy, flavorful detachment for them, people haven't really considered it. And on top of that, there are a lot of people who are very dismissive of Recon because they see we are going into a more melee orientated meta and they think, well, Recon's detachable doesn't work, therefore it's crap. But as someone who has used Recon competitively and casually, I have found it to be actually really good at dealing with melee armies because as we've seen, it's got so many tools for messing with them and keeping them off balance. So bringing all of this together, I think that Death Riders have been overlooked. I think that people have taken one glance at them, dismissed them, and compared them to Rough Riders, and then dismissed them some more. But I actually think they have a lot to offer. I think they could be a fantastic utility unit, and one that could definitely find its home in the Recon detachment, which I think is one of the hidden gems of the Guard Codex. But of course, all of this is just like my opinion, man. Let me know what you guys think down in the comment section below. Are you a fan of Death Riders? Do you think this combo has some potential? Or do you think it's really something that only works in theory? If you enjoyed today's video, don't forget to go ahead and smash that like button. It really does help boost this video with the YouTube algorithm and is a great way of supporting the channel. And if you want to see more of these crazy tactics videos, make sure you subscribe to never miss an episode. But you would definitely be building that combo, going further and further with it. Oh, fuck's sake. Does this all sound like theory crafting and not enough like tabletop Hammer? Oh, fuck's sake. Would you like to know more? If so, then please consider becoming a channel member or patron. By supporting the channel, not only will you be doing your part, but you'll also be helping me create more content for your viewing pleasure and unlocking a whole host of perks. You get everything from a badge next to your name, custom emojis, but the big one is access to the Mordian Glory Discord server, an online community with almost 2,500 active members. It's always popping off in the MG Discord. We've got channels for army lists, hobbying, tactics, stories, and even a pretty spicy meme section as well. For all you greenhorns that wanted to see the Mordian glory hole, today is your lucky day. And joking aside, I do want to say a massive thank you to all of the current channel members and patrons. You guys are amazing, truly the lifeblood of the channel. I could not do Mordian Glory full-time without the incredible and generous support of my members, so thank you guys so much. And last but certainly not least, I want to say a personal thank you to all of my top tier Patreons. These are the War Masters, the people who have truly gone above and beyond the call of duty. So a heartfelt thank you to Alex Dengal, Bon Vert, Lord Pryor, Mark Panconi, RJ Scorpion, Swordfish Trombone, Try Again Bragg, John Stubbs, Nick Walsh, Diesel Fox, and August Barney. Seriously guys, thank you from the bottom of my heart. Your support is incredible and it makes a huge difference. Thank you so much. That's all for now. Hope you've all enjoyed today's video, and of course, as always, see you guys next time.